everyone, welcome to the Court of the Edijester. This one goes out to everybody, so I hope most Substack subscribers will forgive me. There's been a couple of those over the last couple of days, but sometimes things are so important it's worth doing. However, there's a micro-teach coming up and some other bits and bobs that hopefully will make up for my remissness in serving my wonderful and loyal subscribers. There are times when I absolutely despair of where we are, and I have a visceral gut reaction to something. I mean, a real gut punch reaction to something. And I imagine that's the same for many of you who have come across this story. And it takes me a little while to just have a think about exactly what I feel about it all. And then I start thinking. Once I've got rid of the, fainting goat syndrome, I start thinking. So I've watched it unfold over the last couple of days, and I'm in two minds about a lot of it, but I think I've finally come to where I stand. I talk, of course, of the dreadful treatment of a young child who was abused by other children in Glasgow. You've probably seen it by now, and the BBC have reported on it, which is unusual. Unfortunately, I think it shows signs of a much greater malaise than is being addressed by the BBC. And one would hope that the social services in Scotland would be up to the job of ensuring what needs to be done is done. I have my doubts. So let's dig straight in. Parents say son's abusers were given slap on the wrist. From David Cohen, Home Affairs correspondent. The parents of a 14-year-old boy who was tied to a chair and forced to apologise for being gay say the teenagers involved and be given a slap on the wrist by Scotland's justice system. A video clip viewed by the BBC shows the boy sitting in a derelict building with his wrists bound and a stick placed to his throat. Police arrested two 16-year-olds and a 15-year-old and charged them in connection with an abduction and assault, but none were taken to court, despite Scotland's top law officer describing the incident as a horrendous experience. Now you can imagine my desperate and terribly disturbed response to that was to go numb at first, really. I had to sit down for a bit and just to think about that poor boy and what must have gone through his mind. But we also have to remember that what we are dealing with here is children. And we often rush to condemn when really we have to remember they're children. Okay? Now, that is not to say that I, for 1 minute, and I will be the last to do this, think that they should have got off in the way that they appear to have done. But I wanted to do a little bit more analysis about what exactly it is that has happened, and then come to a decision about what I think the whole thing is in the round. So please bear with me. The case was referred to the Scottish Children's Reporter Administration, which appointed a social worker to work with one of the youths. The SRCA told the BBC rules on confidentiality limit what it can disclose about its decisions. Scottish Government policies to avoid sending children to the criminal justice system whenever possible and support them to change their behaviour. The boy's mother said, "Our view was that this was a hate crime. We feel that we've all been traumatised by the system and the lack of support and justice for our son, who was clearly the victim of serious crimes." The incident last summer was followed by another assault on the boy in January this year. That too resulted in the alleged perpetrator being referred to the Children's Reporter. None of the individuals involved can be named because of their age. The boy's mother and father say another parent sent them a video of the first incident on the night it took place in Glasgow. Their son told them he had gone to the building with friends and was assaulted by the other teenagers after they made him admit he was gay. The mother said, "The video showed our son with his wrists bound, tied to a chair. He looked to be in distress and there was a stick being pushed under his throat. The boy that was pushing the stick was saying, 'Say sorry.' I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach." The mother says her son told her there was a petrol can in the room and he was hit with the stick. "It haunts us thinking what must have gone through his head, knowing he couldn't escape," she says. He was told things like he would get his head cut off in Iran for being gay. Their son said he was freed after the teenagers heard sirens in the distance. The parents praised the fantastic response from Police Scotland, saying uniformed officers and detectives told them the case would be taken seriously. The family believed the case was going to be dealt with at Glasgow Sheriff Court, but after making inquiries, they learned it had been referred to the children's reporter. They say that in the weeks that followed, they struggled to find out what was happening. In March this year, more than 8 months after the incident, the SCRA wrote to tell them the final outcome. A social worker was to work with one of the teenagers on their behaviour and any other issues in their life. The SCRA decided not to refer any of the 3 teenagers to a children's hearing, a process which can lead to the imposition of compulsory supervision orders. The boy's father said, "I just couldn't believe that they had chosen this route. We're in an absolute state of shock. We understand that Scotland and society doesn't want to unduly criminalise children, but we feel the only deterrent for these boys to never terrorise anyone like that again was for them to be dealt with in court." The parents say their son, now 15, has left school because he no longer feels safe. They worry about him every time he leaves home. I want to talk to this boy, really, you know. Tell him it's all going to be okay. Scottish Conservative MSP Russell Finlay raised the case with the head of Scotland's Prosecution Service, Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain, KC. She told him the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, COPFS, had taken considerable time to consider all the evidence. Miss Bain wrote, "I do appreciate that this must have been a horrendous experience for your constituent's son." The Lord Advocate said the decision on the case were taken by the Crown in constant consultation with the SCRA. She said they had to balance the undoubted seriousness of the offence with the best interest of the child victim and the child suspects. They also had to consider what the outcome would be if the case was sent to court. The Lord Advocate said the decision to refer the case to the SCRA was final and could not be appealed. She said an error had led to the parents not being informed of the decision and apologised. Mr. Findlay said instead of being treated as a criminal matter, it was diverted to a process whereby the alleged perpetrator's interests were prioritised. If that's the direction of travel, the justice system at the very least has to be upfront with the victims and victims' families. A spokesperson for the COPFS said, "We appreciate the impact this traumatic experience has caused the victim and their family. As public prosecutors, and in keeping with our legal obligations, we are required to make decisions considering the rights of all children involved in a case, who must be treated differently from adults in the criminal justice system." There's more. I'll put the link downstairs. You can read it. You know this nonsense about the 25-year-old brain? That's causing this. That lie. Because it is a lie, by the way. It's another one of these, pat, nice ideas that when you examine it doesn't work. We don't wait for somebody to walk. We don't wait for somebody's legs to form so they walk. Angry doesn't even cover it. You imagine that had been a trans-identified male. What do you think would have happened to the perpetrators then? And what's this about Iran and cutting their heads off? This is a prevent issue. These boys should be reported to prevent. All of them that are involved in this. I want to know what were their influences in their lives. Are they attached to, close to, or being influenced by an Islamist? Are they being influenced by an LGBTQ plus cultist? Are they? Remember, they said you can get your cut off. Not only can get your head cut off in Iran, you can get the operation paid for by the state because they can't have the gays, but they'll mutilate you. What do these boys know? How can we be sure that the social workers aren't captured by this nonsense? This is all the questions that were going through my head. All of them that were going through my head. I think this is egregious. I think what has happened here is, to a certain degree, correct. That there should be social services involvement, and the social services should be examining all of the connections that those perpetrators have. All of them. There should also be an examination of the school to which the boy was attending. Are they pushing LGBTQ? Have they got an LGBT club? This is a safeguarding issue, right as red as it gets, as red flag as it gets. But in addition to that, there should have been an adult punishment, an adult-sized punishment, so severe that those boys will never forget it. And by that I mean, in the cells, strip search, 48 hours, that's what they should have done, short, sharp shock. Short, sharp shock. Real shock. That's what they should have done. Maybe they did. And then tagging until they're 18. No going out after 6 at night, and no going out before 6 in the morning. There you go. Is there any of that? No. Spare the rod, spoil the child. But we must remember they are children. What a balance. I'd like to talk to them all. But there you go. I'll leave you with it. Thanks for watching.